Thank you all so much for coming. I know it's very chilly out there, but luckily, it's going to be hot and sunny in here before you know it. So you've come to the right place. I'm going to give you a brief introduction. We have two amazing authors here tonight in conversation. One is a local author right here in Connecticut, and the other has come all the way across the seas. So we're excited to have both of them. First, I'm going to introduce Kristan Higgins. She'll be in conversation with Jane Costello, who, of course, has written It's Getting Hot in Here. Kristan is the New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly best-selling author of more than 20 novels. They've been translated into 19 languages and sold millions of copies worldwide. Her books have received dozens of awards and accolades, including starred reviews from Entertainment Weekly, People, Kirkus, the New York Journal of Books, and more. So we are very excited. Welcome back. You may have seen Kristan with us before. She's one of our favorites here at RJ Julia. Next, we have Jane and also Catherine, which many of you may know. She writes two, I don't know if you'd call them genres, but one Jane Costello, the other Catherine Isaac. And we have her books here under both names this evening, so you'll get a chance. If you don't have them, we do have the books at the register, so if you don't have them yet, and they will be signing after. Jane Costello is a best-selling British novelist whose romantic comedies have sold over 1 million copies in the UK. Her novel, You, Me, Everything, was published under the pseudonym Catherine Isaac, and it's been translated into 26 languages. I was speaking briefly with Jane before, and she said she's traveled around the world. She's done a book tour around the world, so first time here in New England. So welcome, and thank you so much for coming. I hope you get some clam chowder before you.
So it's very nice to do. I loved this book. I read it in like 2 sittings. And I just want, first of all, I just want to thank you for writing A Woman of a Certain Age. Lisa is 47 years old. She's got 2 boys. She's twice divorced. She's a full-time TV programming exec. And her best friend is fighting cancer, which sounds like a lot of people's lives, very busy, running at full speed on every level. She's also commandeered by the PTA, which I really loved about this book. So I loved Lisa. She's funny, she's honest, she's sometimes awkward, which we all love. Is she based on anyone you know? Maybe yourself?
Well, not completely based on myself. I've now written, this is my 15th novel, so you have to just sort of make them up. Right. There reaches a stage, doesn't there? But I think definitely this is the first, I'd written many rom-coms before this, but years ago, and I sort of got to the age of, I'd say my early 40s, and I was writing about all these 27-year-olds finding love and in various amusing and entertaining ways. But, the older I got, the more, I felt a little bit disengaged from those heroines. So I stopped writing these books for quite a long time. And I then wrote these Catherine Isaac novels, which are more emotional love stories. But I just got to my late 40s, and all the events I did as Catherine Isaac, people kept coming up to me and saying, we loved the rom-coms because they made us laugh, and are you going to write a rom-com? And I honestly, I sort of batted it away most of the time and said, no, I resisted the whole idea. And then I got to my late 40s myself, and I guess I was just looking around as a reader, thinking, God, I would love to read something that was really funny and entertaining and just sort of very uplifting, but with a character that's my age.
Well, you fell back into rom-com. Beautiful.
Oh, well, I loved it. It was honestly, I loved writing this book. I mean, not all books are easy to write at all. Some of them, for reasons I've never been able to work out, are absolutely, it's like knitting with spaghetti, and you're just trying to make it work, and they're real, you know, they give you real headache every day. This one, because I just felt so, it was so joyous writing a rom-com again. I loved it. Plus, you know, I'm 51 now, and I was writing this obviously a couple of years ago, and there's just so much material. I mean, there's so much material in perimenopause, in raising teenagers. I mean, you know, you're writing a comedy. It's just there. It was a gift. It was an absolute gift. So it was a joyous book to read. And yeah, I mean, some of it, Lisa, I'm not twice divorced. I have been divorced once, but you know, there's elements of it undoubtedly have been, as all authors, we're magpies, aren't we? You know, we take little bits of people we meet, and you know, and our own experiences. Because I think with this book, the word I hear most is that she's relatable.
Exactly.
So it had to be a bit of me and a bit of everybody else I know, every other woman I know at this age.
As soon as I read her first argument with her older son, Leo, I said, Jane has a teenage son. And then I found out that you have 3.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
He was one of my favorite characters. Leo. God, he was
Gosh.
wonderful. But Zach, the hero, is American, and he's called over by the head office to cover for Lisa's best friend. He's only going to be there for 6 months. And his first move is to kill a show that Lisa has been working on for a year. I loved him because he was so irritating and so confident and so charming and good looking. But he's also that thing that we women love the most. He is a man who can apologize. No, so clearly he's fictional. And but I loved, you know. Sorry, listen and learn. Now. Just listen and learn. No more better to be a good partner than reading romance, I tell you. So how did you choose him, and how did you develop him? Because he has issues, like Lisa's got a very full life, a lot of baggage, which I think it just adds to his character. He's not just some fresh college graduate. How did you keep him from being a cliche? Because he is tall, dark, and handsome, you know, slick and great.
Yeah, I mean,
kisser.
I think I mean, of all the elements, you know, every sort of other element in the book has been picked out of little bits of real life. Unfortunately, I have never had a steamy romance with somebody in, you know, like this. But no, he he was just, I loved creating him as a character, you know, I really did. I think it is a sort of enemies to lovers type, you know, my own spin on that idea.
Yeah.
But the thing with that trope, as it were, quite often the guys in it, you know, to be an enemy at the beginning, they do something that actually is really quite hateful, and I really kind of struggle quite often to end up liking them. But there is a very specific reason in this why he does kill the show, and that only makes him even more, you know, you learn what he has layers, I suppose. And yeah, I guess that's just after a long time of writing, that was really that's what you learn to add into a character, isn't it? It's just layers and layers upon layers. So yeah, I enjoyed writing him a lot. I really did.
Enjoyed reading him a lot. Very much so. The other thing I loved about this book are the large population of secondary characters. Lisa has a female boss who's always putting the moves on handsome men. She has her wonderful friend who's undergoing cancer treatments, and the PTA fellow parents. But the ones I loved the most were her sons. She's got an adorable 10-year-old son whose only flaw is he can't commit to a sport or activity. So every week it's like, I want to be a baseball player. I want to join the basketball club. I'm thinking about rugby. And he loves pets. He wants to have all the pets he can. But the one who really spoke to me was Leo, the 15-year-old boy, because I raised a teenage son too. And I felt like these were tape recordings taken from my hallway as I was yelling at Declan. So
That's very reassuring. It really is. That's really interesting, actually. I loved writing that character, and of all of the storylines in this, that was the one I was actually most worried about. As soon as I submitted this book, I said to my English editor who read it first, "Is this too much?" Because she has this absolutely, well, several explosive rows. Because obviously she's perimenopausal. Her hormones are all over the place. His are all over the place. You can imagine, what happens. And there's one in particular where they have this terrible row, terrible. And she is devastated by, so she says some fairly awful things, and then, responds to this. She feels awful about it, and goes to all her self-help books to try and find out how to be a better parent, and only feels even worse about it. And he the next day has basically forgotten about it. So she really tears herself apart about it. But yeah, and I teenagers are interesting, aren't they? And they're interesting to write about, because I really wanted him. I mean, he is awful in so many ways, but equally, there's a beautiful human being in there somewhere, right from the beginning, just fighting to get out.
And he shows that beautiful person to everyone except his mother.
Oh, he's horrible.
Who can relate to
horrible.
Now, I was loving Lisa's lists. The opening page, is her list of things to do, and every once in a while she'll drop another list in to start off a chapter. And I thought that was so well done. It really gives you a picture of what moms, especially single moms, have to do, from ordering new socks and getting the stuff the kids need for school, and repaneling the living room and sending flowers to your mother, and then my favorite, descale the kettle. Because it's one of those things like, oh yeah, I need to do a clean, coffee pot in my case, but it never gets done. And I walk past it every day and feel guilty. I'm like, tomorrow I'll definitely do it. I'm sorry. But I thought that was such a brilliant way to talk about all the things that moms have to balance, and yet, there's still worked into the crevices of this book is this burgeoning romance, which is so hopeful. And, my friends who've been divorced in middle age, it's really difficult to find another person, especially when you're set in your ways. And one of the things that I thought was brilliant about this book is that I really didn't expect them to end up together. I didn't see how that was going to happen. And, obviously it's romance going to have a happy ending, but there were such good reasons for them not to be together. And I really admired that, because, in the rom-coms we see, it's just a matter of time,
Yes. And sometimes the reasons you think are a bit tenuous, aren't they? But yeah, there are solid reasons why they cannot be together. It was interesting writing a rom-com about somebody in midlife, because I did not want, I was very conscious at the beginning. I didn't want her to be looking for a man in any way, shape or form. Right. She's got this very messy past. She's been married and divorced twice, which she actually feels a bit embarrassed about, because she's, and one of them was a very brief marriage when she was still at college, and, but this most recent one, she really thought that was going to be forever. And he went off and started, found a new girlfriend and all the usual things. But she's been single for ages, and is now hitting perimenopause, and is basically like, well, this is I'm fine, and she is fine. She's not. You don't ever get a sense at the beginning. Okay, she's torn in every direction, but she does not feel like she's pining for some man in her life. She would never be doing Tinder or anything like that. No, she really wouldn't. And so she is very resistant to the idea of that in the beginning. And even, I suppose traditionally in a romance, at the end, you like to, there's I suppose a sense that them getting together sort of completes the heroine. I don't think you get a sense of that I think he is like the icing on the cake, and his role very much is to help her rediscover as many sides to herself, but also, like I've mentioned, this is sort of, it is a bit steamy in some places. And the whole concept of desire is something that she thinks is in the past. She is never going to feel, it's never going to be part of herself. She herself is never going to feel that way, not just about another man, but about herself. And he very much sort of reintroduces her to this, in a very sort of, it just evolves like that. And yeah, but they do, they fall in love as a result of it. Yeah.
And I loved that, while there are some steamy parts, there's just also, you express attraction and desire so well, especially for a woman who's not looking for it and, thinks like, well, I'm of a certain age, that's behind me. And yet, he bumps into her and she's electrified, and it was, I do think that that's a cliche of like, oh, I'm of a certain age, the factory is shut down, and it was so nice to see her having this really passionate, yummy, juicy relationship, even if they're just standing in the elevator together,
exactly, thinking
about
it's not, when I say it's steamy, that this is not, it doesn't go too far, put it that way. But I think it just we are introduced, and hopefully as a reader you will share what she is feeling. And as you say, even as she's just standing in an elevator, there's so much chemistry between the two of them. From the first moment that they meet.
And as a a writer who does closed door scenes, I appreciated how far you went, and that it wasn't like a gynecological lesson, with 15 pages spent describing different parts. So I thought you really just like walked that line so beautifully.
It's interesting you should say that, because I've written 15 novels, and this is the first one where I haven't just closed the door. And so I said to my mum, you can't read this. You cannot read this book. Anyway, she did, annoyingly. And she was like, well, I'm a grown woman. It's fine.
Where do you think you came from?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I was always afraid of my children reading it. And my daughter says, oh, I just skip those parts on me. But she didn't want to know that I kiss her father in front of her, And my son was like, no. I had to force him to read one of my books. He's in his 20s now. Have your sons read it?
I will never, ever read my book. Because somebody did say to me at the event yesterday, are you not worried that your sons will read these, Absolutely not. I have not a chance in hell. I think that I will read this.
So I told my son a few years ago, my books have put you through college and bought you a car and taken you on vacations. So I think you need to read one. And I gave him the least steamy, women's fiction with a male point of view character and stuff. Took him 1 year. And it was, he's like, and at the end he texted me, I really enjoyed the ending, didn't see that coming, well done. Can I blurb you? I'm like, so I think I want to leave time for questions, but can you talk about the process of writing a novel for you? Do you have a schedule? Are you disciplined? Are you sloppy?
No, I am actually I'm incredibly disciplined, because I mean, I don't know, I don't know what you feel like, but when you've written loads of books, I always assume by this point it would be easy. And it's not really, because you just seem to set the bar higher, and you've been through that many editors and read that many grotty Amazon reviews that actually you are your own worst critic.
Yes.
And you make sure every element of it is as good as you can make it, I think. But no, I am pretty disciplined. I plot everything in advance. I say that I plot it all in advance, and then I start writing, and then all the characters go off and do their own thing. So it's a constant work in progress, really. And yeah, what you know what it's like if you're raising kids. You have to, And sometimes I've been asked, do you just wait until the mood takes you? God, no, I've got a mortgage to pay. I have to sit down at my desk. The moment I get get the kids off to school and start writing. And I think all authors, as you'll know, the demands on our time now, we all have to do the whole social media thing, and it's only increased, hasn't it? Vastly.
It's another full-time job.
It is.
You write the books and then you promote the books and engage. And I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about this age is that you can immediately answer a post that, reads about your book, or you can email fans back, and yet it's like a double-edged sword. You can spend 3 hours scrolling through social media. And
that's exactly right. It's like it's a wonderful, it is a wonderful part of it, and it is a crucial part. You just can't do the job anymore without that.
right.
But I guess we all came into this that we want to be writers,
Right,
don't we?
right.
That's
Part
the
of
thing
it.
we love. That's the thing we love. So
Right, if we could stay in our houses in our pajamas, just writing with our various pets and cups of coffee, that's the dream. But no, it's not like my husband's like, my God, you look so nice. I'm like, you forgot, haven't you? He's like, of course you're leaving me to go out. So do we have, are we doing?
Yes,
again?
please.
Okay, I just have one more question. Her ex-husband was another delightful character, and he has a lot of fun and very typical habits of a middle-aged man who is trying to keep a much younger woman happy. He goes to the gym all the time. He wears ridiculous hipster clothes, you talk about the things that he does as a husband. Was any of that cathartic for you?
Oh,
a little bit. Yeah, he's not entirely. He isn't based on my ex-husband because he's never done the whole. This I loved writing that character, by the way. He's so much fun. I know in a lot of romances, sometimes the ex comes back on the scene, don't they? And you think, oh, they're going to get back together. She's never getting back together.
That was
with
so
him.
clear.
Yeah,
He wasn't a bad guy though, which is
he's
another
not.
thing.
No,
I appreciate.
no, he's just sort of. She's just so much better off without him, I think, is the top and bottom of it. But what he is just a bit useless with the kids, he just sort of, he's a bit of a McDonald's dad, I guess. So
right.
he'll, she's running around doing absolutely everything, like this modern day superwoman. And he rolls up and says he's taking, the kid, he'll go buy one a toy and comes back with a hamster. The hamster promptly multiplies and turns into 10 hamsters. So she's left with having to deal with hamster babies and trying to offload these hamsters.
Before they're eaten.
Yeah, exactly.
By each other.
So he's not this like bad evil guy. He's just a bit useless.
Yeah.
And he was really good fun to me.
I enjoy like when my husband is reading because he reads them, when I get my finished author copies and he'll start reading it. And when he'll see the irritating spouse do something like leave a knife in the sink for 12 hours. And then when I finally wash it, I said, I was gonna do that. When he sees himself in print, he's like, honey, is this me? I'm like, of course it's you. Of course it is. You're great material for the good and the bad. But why don't we let you guys ask some questions?
I just want to say to you, that was a nice article in Connecticut Magazine.
Thank you. The one about my house?
Yeah.
So my publicist tried for years to get Connecticut Magazine, which is a very snooty, highbrow magazine, to feature me as an author. And we renovated our house about 2 years ago, and my publicist and I have become friends, and so I'm sending her pictures. And she said, so I can't get you featured as an author in Connecticut Magazine, but I can get you featured as a homeowner.
Oh my God.
Because they like, they like interesting houses, and ours is kind of quirky and fun, and I grew up on the land that we built on, so. But it was kind of funny because it was like an afterthought, like, oh yeah, she's an author too, but look at these tiles. So thank you, though. She was very proud.
All right, I have one for you. Why do you go by two names? Isn't that confusing to your followers, your fans?
God, it is, and yes, it really is. But I'll tell you the background behind it. So I wrote these rom-coms for 10 years, and then obviously, like I said, I got to a certain age and decided I needed to write a different sort of novel. And in fact, I didn't set out to write something completely different. It just kind of happened like that. It did like that. And this one was my first Catherine Isaac novel. And it is basically about a single mom who takes her 10-year-old son on a road trip to France, to the south of France, to go and find his estranged father, who's running this beautiful hotel chateau in France. And the reason they're going to look for him is that she's discovered there is Huntington's disease in her family. And if anybody knows much about it, everybody, every child of somebody with HD has a 50-50 chance of having the faulty gene that causes it. So that obviously has implications for her, but also the son as well. And so there was I wrote this book because I know somebody who was in this position, a young man who he was one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. He was running marathons, he's started this amazing restaurant company, doing really, really well. And at the time, he was telling me that there's a test you can have to find out whether you are going to develop this or not. And he chose not to have the test, and I couldn't get my head around this. My instant reaction was, you'd have to know.
Right.
But actually, he had just chosen to live every day as it comes, and really sort of live in the moment. And as a result of which has lived this incredibly rich life. And he looks after his mom, who does have it. And anyway, in his particular story, he did end up having the test because he got married. He got engaged, and they wanted to have children, so that had implications. And he was negative, as it turned out.
Goodness.
But for literally 10 years, he didn't know, and he said, do you know what, I've lived a more rich and full, I've lived every day like this is the last one of it. Anyway, so there was so much to think about in that, and I wrote this book. This is the one that sold into 26 countries. It was published here, the movie rights were sold, and all that kind of stuff. But because that obviously is not, it's the funny parts, but the sad parts in it as well. It is not immediate, that's not a rom-com, is it?
Right,
So as a result of that, the decision was taken by my publisher, agents, and various other people that it would be a good idea to give me this pseudonym and do it under that name.
Did you kind of have to start over as Catherine
Yeah,
Isaac?
yeah.
New website?
And I'll be honest, it's, with hindsight, I don't know whether I would, because of so much of it now is social media and that kind of thing. And it is a very different type of book. And I've written 5 of these types of books now, all dealing with all kinds of different things. They're not all about health issues. There's one is about somebody who, somebody isn't agoraphobic, and they all are very hopeful books that deal with, and they've got funny parts in. It's not a book about a disease, it's a book about love and families and resilience and the human spirit, basically. But very different from this, which you will laugh more than anything
so
else,
much.
hopefully, I would say. So that was the reason.
There was a question in the back.
Know the ending of your books, rewrite them, or do you that evolve?
I do. I've tried doing it the other way. I know a lot of authors, we've all got our own different ways, haven't we? And lots of people just literally don't even know what the book is about, and they sit down, they write the words chapter 1 and start writing. And I would love to be able to do that, but I just can't. And I've tried it that way, and it's fairly disastrous results. It just, it just goes off on all kinds of tangents. I forget the name of characters,
Most authors know the beginning and the ending. And the middle is
I
where.
don't know, I've met a lot of authors lately who really do not know. And I mean, I don't know, I think I've been surprised actually. Maybe it's only recently I've met quite a few people who say, oh no, it needs to be a surprise to me as well. And then, someone described it as like pulling Kleenex out of a box. It's just one after it. I can't get my head around that. And to be honest, the plotting it for me, even though as soon as I start, these characters take on a life of their own, they have voices of their own, they want me to go in all different directions. Just having that skeleton makes me feel comfortable, I suppose. Stops me panicking about where it's about coming up with something terrible. I've got time to think and make sure that I'm doing everything just right. And also it's good for writer's block, I think, because some days you're just not feeling it. But we still have to write. You can't just, when it's your living, you can't just say, well, I'm not feeling it today, I won't bother, I'll go to the gym instead. You have to push through it. And for me, having that sort of roadmap is enormously helpful.
That's exactly what it is. You can get to California by driving west. It's a lot easier if you know the routes you're going to take. I'm also an outlander.
Yeah.
Although there have been times when a twist has surprised me, and just kind of appears on the page, like, oh, that's a great idea, Kristan, it's all on the back. I think it's true, like no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the author. But I do think you have to be writing the book for those little moments of grace to appear, and you think,
Exactly.
It's a great idea,
And it does change, obviously, because you start to live in that world and live in those characters' heads. So yeah, it is for me anyway, it's constantly evolving. But I do like just the comfort of knowing, even if I didn't have a single good idea between now and the end of the year, that's fine, because I've got the roadmap out in front of me.
And are your boys still home?
My eldest is at university, and the other two are, yes.
I think for me, it was easier to write when the kids were home because, they go off to school, get on the school bus and like, go, this is your time, because I don't stop when they get home. And I'm an empty nester now, and it was really difficult to adjust to having all this time and schooling in front of me, like, I'll get to that later, I can go to the gym or something, And then, of course, it'd be like, 2 months before my dad, I gotta get to work, gotta get on this. So there was an adjustment for me. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just for both of you, have you ever just, you're knitting a sweater and you just pull it all out and say, okay, that's just, yes, I can do that. Do you have as well, change direction? Yeah.
I remember it was one of my early books, two of my in the first 10. I realized I was writing a book that didn't feel like me. It didn't feel authentic, and I had the idea was a woman invents a fake boyfriend in order to keep like the family eyes off her after her fiance and her sister hooked up, and but at first it wasn't, what was that called? Too Good to Be True. And I got to like 3/4 of the book and I thought, this is all wrong. And so I threw away the entire thing and I kept the character's name and the premise of the book. Grace invents a fake boyfriend. So that was terrifying. And then another time I did it because I just thought, I know there's a good book in here, but it's going to be easier to write if I just start fresh. So how about you, Jane?
I've never thrown 3/4 away. I've got rid of about 60,000 words before, and I mean, God, that's a lot of words, isn't it, when you think about it? And
Kill
you've
your
done the
darlings.
same, I know. Yeah, I have, and but I think that one, it wasn't like I wrote 60,000 and then got rid of them. It was, this book just kept going on and on and on and on. And I was like, I can't make it, you know. And there was one storyline that was, actually, this was the agoraphobia book. This is interesting to me as a writer, actually. This book was an absolute puzzle. It was really difficult. There was loads of research, and it's not out here, so I won't even bother telling you what it's called, and unless I do get a publisher for it here, but one day, and then I'll come back and tell you all about it. But it was incredibly difficult to write, and there were like 2 timelines. And one timeline, it was just totally wrong. I'd done loads of research, and there was basically a key part of the premise that I discovered historically couldn't have happened.
Oh.
And so I could have just kind of skated over it, but I didn't want to be that. Although this is fiction, you've got to, set it in a world where it fits with reality. Otherwise, you break the spell with the reader. So that was the one I got rid of 60,000 words. It was such a headache. I had so many sleepless nights. But of all my books, that one has my highest Goodreads. I mean, until this, but we won't know till this because it's
Leave
only
a
just
5-star
out.
review.
Yeah. But yeah, it's it's probably the one that I'm most proud of. So I do these days, whenever I have like a really hard time with a book, I think, this is going to be even better. That's why,
Yeah.
you'll
Yeah.
honed it to perfection.
Yeah.
So yeah, throw away so many words.
Yeah,
It's quite
I
terrifying.
think the more we authors struggle with the book, kind of the better it becomes,
Exactly.
because we're questioning it
Yeah.
and thinking, is this the right way to go? And I research my books a lot, so if there's going to be like a medical issue or something, I become like an MD. But I do think that sort of, I call it the misery and despair part of writing is really necessary to get to the good stuff and to know you scrape it clean so the reviewers don't.
Yeah.
Well, because the thing, and actually the other thing is, I don't think I'm totally confident that readers can't tell the difference between the books that I've really struggled with and the books that have just flown off the page, because we start at the beginning knowing sort of what we want it to look like, and some books you can get it to that point relatively easily for reasons I don't even know. For others, it's just a lot harder. But we're not going to let it go until it's there.
Right.
And it does involve a lot of trial and error and mistakes, and yeah.
All right.
Someone in the back.
Okay, last question. Are there any things that you do in particular to get inspiration or find inspiration for ideas? And when you land on something, do you generally know, like, oh, this is something I want to work with versus say, 10 other ideas that pop in your head that.
I tend to I tend to have a little bank of ideas that have been brewing for a while. I mean, my iPhone notes are just like, I don't even know. It's just ridiculous. I've been writing things I know is great. It's the same.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So whenever, I love personally, I mean, this is, I don't know if there's an equivalent here, but we have this Radio 4 in the UK, which is like all talk radio basically. And they do a lot of kind of real life stories. And every so often I'll hear something on the news or you know,
Yeah, we
God,
have
that wouldn't that make
NPR
a
on the
great-
weekends.
Okay.
I think the storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that sort of thing has provided some inspiration, or just, I don't know, with an example like this, it genuinely was, I was thinking, I really want to read a rom-com that's in this age group, but it was also the fact on the back of all the stuff that's out about the menopause at the moment. There's a whole movement happening around us,
Right.
in which people are finally starting to make that part of an everyday conversation, whereas even 5 years ago, we weren't talking about the
Right,
menopause
right.
at all. And the fact that this is sort of so high on people, on the agenda
Right,
these days, made it even more powerful a proposition for me, I think.
I think too, if menopause was a male issue, it would be solved now, all the discomfort, like the guy who invented Viagra got the Nobel Prize for medicine, and here we are with women struggling along, right, so I agree, like
But
it's a
the
time.
tide is changing, isn't it? It definitely is, and I think, I don't know, I think women who are in their 40s and 50s these days are probably very different from how their mothers and grandmothers were, and their outlook is, and I think there is people are feeling optimistic as a result of this all this focus on the menopause. So yeah, in answer to your question, it comes from all kinds of sources, but I don't know about you, whenever I do come up with an idea, I do just write a note of it and then refuse to even think about it until I finish the current book, because sometimes you get so excited about an idea, you have to just, block it away and not even think about it until the time comes for the next one.
Well, unfortunately, we're gonna have to end it there. Thank you so much.